Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. How's it going, Joe?
Good. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, pretty good. So yeah, mix of work and relaxation, good decompression. So how about yourself? Sounds
Uh,
like you're doing some construction.
yeah. So it was just a week of work,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Well,
fine.
hopefully it was a different kind of work, right? Like these days, I find cleaning and laundry to be relaxing because it's not my usual. So,
Nice. The simple things in life.
yeah, the basics, the essentials. Yeah,
Nice. Well, I got a lot of laundry if you want to come over and do that for me. So
yeah, yeah.
awesome. Well, this week we want to talk about a topic that's, I think, near and dear to us, and a question that we get asked a lot, which is, um, do you know of any data engineers that I can hire?
All
So
the time, all the time.
all the
Yeah,
time, right? Yeah. So we're going to talk about hiring data engineers in an insanely tight job market.
yep. And build versus buy. That's going to be a big theme, which we'll talk about. Maybe we'll even loop back to that one later because
Yeah.
in
Some
training
variations on that.
roles. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, in typical fashion here, let's actually pull up some anecdotal evidence real quick. So yeah, and Googling around for the talent shortage of data engineers, I mean, you come across these articles, right, that talk about demand for data engineers is outstripping supply
Mhm.
since in this case 2016, and there's a shortage of data engineers. I think we'll get into this, but I know you and I, we're having this discussion precisely because there's a shortage, at least in our local area.
Yeah.
Of course, when you start when you start digging into the data, it gets kind of funny. Um, so data engineers, for example, the top trending job title in the US year over year, the top one was data engineer. Of course.
Of course, actuary was number two, which is kind of interesting. That's sort of a
Yeah.
blast from your past, right? I even considered becoming an actuary at one point. I never took
Uh-huh.
any exams or anything like that. But yeah, data engineers is above actuary.
And data scientist, surprisingly, is quite a ways down, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what this means. It's from Dice, and it's also from 2019, right? So, but it's interesting because I've seen quite a few articles cite the data, the data in this article as being, oh, well, data engineering is a top job, and I think another article, what was it here? Um, I think there's another one here, but anyway, uh, they all kind of reference this article, but again, like everything changed last March because of COVID.
Yep.
So, and if anything, we think we still need to wait for the data to bear itself out. But if anything, I think what we're seeing is um, like more demand for data science and data engineering than we did before COVID.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think, I mean, we need to wait for the world to settle down, which maybe that's going to take a year from today. We probably have to get into 2022 before the aftermath of the pandemic and everything really started to settle and before we see what the new situation is. But we've seen a huge shift online, right? And that's driving a lot of data consumption. And then again, anecdotally, even more traditional brick and mortar companies are much more interested in their data because they're trying to respond to this crazy situation. And the question is, after a pandemic, do they pull back or does that become a core part of their strategy going forward?
right. Yeah, exactly. And there's some other things too, right? So you would think with supply demand economics as they are that data engineering salaries might be kind of high. Well, when we keep hearing that data scientists get paid less than data engineers. So let's look at a couple examples of this just to see, right? So if we go to data scientist salaries for ZipRecruiter, this is the US average, so 119,000 a year, right? So again, we're talking mainly about the United States. We'll get into a second why this might anecdotally apply in other places as well. You have a big data engineer salary of $130,000. I'm pretty sure if you take the word big off, that would also mean data engineer salary. So, and you see the same thing happening over here, right? So a data engineer base salary on Indeed, 132,000. Data scientist salary in Indeed is 123,000. So
Yeah. And I think it probably helps to think about different skill sets for data engineers. So back in 2015, the really hot thing, the thing that would grab you a huge salary was experience on the Hadoop stack, right? And at this point, Hadoop itself is kind of going out of fashion.
or Spark at the time too. So
And Spark, I would say, is a lot hotter right now than Hadoop is, but maybe it's started to decline a little bit.
mhm.
But then, what are the new skills? Well, there are things like Snowflake engineer, for example. I mean, look at the Snowflake IPO this year, or anything to do with cloud. So, in other words, if you can handle data and you can work with cloud systems, a lot of companies need those skills in conjunction now. Especially as they're migrating databases to the cloud, there's going to be a huge amount of demand in those specific areas.
Yeah, and I think in terms of skills,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at skills and by extension certifications, right? The hot certifications is AWS, especially like the cloud architect,
Yeah.
solutions architect. That's a big one. The pro level, I think, is according to some outlets at least is like the highest paid IT cert. There's others that say that the Google Cloud cloud architect cert is the highest paid one. Either way, what do those two have in common? They're cloud architect certs, right?
Yeah.
And we have those, in multiple clouds, as well as a Snowflake cert. And yeah, these skills are very valuable, and the skills you get from these certs are directly applicable to these tasks at hand.
And
So
they're very hard to find, right? So finding someone who has database experience who's also gone to the trouble of getting a cloud cert, we just don't see a lot of people like that. And when we run into that, we're like, okay, can we talk to you?
yeah,
Maybe we'll want to hire
can I get
you.
your autograph?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, and this is and let me just share another screenshot real quick. So this is so last week we asked on LinkedIn. Okay, so we're asked. You know, I know you are too. Like I'm asked
yeah.
every week. Several companies will call up and ask, hey, we're can you hook us up with any data engineers? And part of that's because we're active in the data engineering community here. We're plugged into a lot of companies. We know a lot of people. So we're probably the perfect people to ask for this type of a question. And unfortunately, the answer I think both of us tend to give is a strong maybe.
Yeah, it's like, well, how much are you offering for this position, and how wide a net do you want to cast? Are you willing to pay someone's moving expenses? Because a lot of people are interested in moving from the Bay Area out to Utah
Yeah.
or out to places where the cost of living is a lot lower. But you're going to have to incentivize them. They can go anywhere in the country with their skills. And so what are you going to do to bring them here?
Yeah. And quite a few good responses. Some people were advocating for supporting a less experienced employee and just
Mm-hmm.
leveling them up. And we'll talk about this in a bit. Uh, people kind of questioning what is good talent, and I'm not going to get into philosophical implications of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, skill sets keep coming up over and over. A lot of people are interested in this one.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, we're having a brutal time right now. Same thing. So this isn't just I think what we're seeing. This is what's being um, played out across not just the U.S. but I would say globally. So
Absolutely. Yeah, but the flip side of that is that a lot of other people come to us and say, hey, how can I get into data science, or in many cases, data engineering? Like, what do I need to do to get those skills? And so I think there's a latent pool of potential data engineers out there, but somehow the pipeline that gets them the right training so they can be real data engineers working in a company is not quite functioning as well as it could be quite yet.
not at all. No, I mean it's interesting too. I mean, especially when you compare the training offerings for like a data scientist compared to a data engineer,
Right.
it's not even close, right? Like I can count on my hands how many data engineering resources there are, to learn how to be a data engineer. And honestly, when I look at those, I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, they're okay. I think there's some things that we would improve on, and that's. Uh, but it is what it is, and it's just a wide open playing field right now. Like there's not enough talent out there. Period. Right. Like I think it comes down to the fact that you're gonna have to basically train a lot of new people. That's just simple math.
Unquestionably, right? At least industry wide. I mean, if you have deep pockets, then I'm sure you can hire an experienced person, although you do have to be really careful that they actually have the skill set that you're after.
Right.
I think Hadoop experience can translate into other types of skills. But if you hire someone with 10 years of Hadoop experience, they're not going to be like
Yep.
immediately effective on your new stack on Snowflake or something like that. It's going to take them time to get up to speed. And so that extra money you're shelling out may be kind of wasted in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in terms of absolute numbers, we just need more data engineers than are currently.
Yeah. And we'll keep digging into the numbers. I want to get like a pretty firm number in terms of like what that gap actually is of demand versus supply. I've looked around and I haven't found anything that I would consider to be good, which is why we aren't showing it, just because I'm kind of questioning. I mean, when we started off, we kind of were more, I think, kind of tongue in cheek looking at some of the data, just because it's kind of hand wavy, right? I think
Right, right.
people tend to refer back to pretty stale stats, and the data are what they are, right? If it's not there, it's not there, and so we'll, instead of making stuff up, we'll just I think go off the anecdotal evidence that we have, as well as salaries and everything else. But you can also look at other anecdotal stuff too, like the Snowflake IPO. It's a monster. Databricks is about to have an IPO. That's going to be huge.
Even MicroStrategy, frankly, is kind of an old school data company. But how they saw a huge bump in business this year. I'm trying to remember, was it like 50% or something? It was something
I
totally.
remember.
Go look at it.
Yeah, they were doing so well. They had to figure out ways to deploy their capital, and they just bought a bunch of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
Like
they're a Bitcoin company now.
they have so much money that they don't know what to do with it. And that's true of a lot of data companies, but people need to run those tools, right? Like who is running your MicroStrategy stack? Who's building out reports?
Yeah.
So
And other anecdotal stuff too, like Presto, right? Raised a bunch of money at a giant valuation, and that's just exhibit C out of like, infinite number of cases, not just in data engineering, but ML ops is starting to see a lot of investment too. Point being, everything associated with data engineering is getting funding and making money right now,
yeah,
right? So, but again, kind of the crux of it all is you need people to deploy this. Fivetran also, right? They kind of like circumvent the issue by just, I applaud what Fivetran does in a lot of cases, because they just uh, they sort of remove a lot of the manual labor from the equation, and that when we get into the build versus buy discussion, we'll talk more about that too, because it's you know technology is going to respond to a skills gap. So
yeah, and I think companies still need data engineers, but anything you could do to make them more efficient is going to be worth a lot to you in terms of speed of deployment and just deploying their time elsewhere where it's really needed for something custom and specific.
yeah, let's talk about this then. There's a notion of build and buy, and it's not, I think, what the audience might think it is, right? So we're going to talk about two dimensions of build and buy. We're going to talk about building and buying systems to some degree. This isn't really what we're here to talk about, though. It's building and buying talent.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so think of it this way. You can either, to the point of one of the people in that LinkedIn post, cultivate the talent internally, which would be build, or you can go buy the talent, which means hiring somebody, or if that doesn't work, find a contractor. And so we're going to go over all these different facets.
Yeah. And one fundamental problem I think we see in this discussion is that usually when people are talking about training in the tech industry, they're talking about code schools for people who've never been in the tech industry. And I think for data engineering, maybe the discussion should shift more toward how do you train people who are already in tech, who have good skills, but not specific to data engineering, because they've already proven themselves in the domain and they can certainly shift their skills into data engineering. But how do they do that? How do they get the training and also the experience to be good data engineers coming, for example, from a software development background?
Right. And so that'd be the build part of it, right? So if you're a company, yeah, I mean, so if you have existing engineers and maybe they're interested in data engineering, it might make sense to train them up on the technologies and the paradigms and the skills that will be needed to achieve what you want to do with data engineering. I guess the crux of that part, though, is then you got to backfill their position, and software engineering hiring is about as brutal as data engineering.
That's the trouble, right? Yeah, one way or the other, there's still a talent shortage across the board when you're looking at all these domains. Yeah.
Yeah, and so situations like this too, I think our advice is, consider who, if you're going to try and take this route, like figure out who's going to be a good fit, figure out how you're going to backfill that position if you need to backfill it. Recognize too that application development and data engineering is becoming, in my opinion, at least, kind of the same thing. Like you can't really ignore data these days.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
can make it a first-class citizen. I know people like throw up these artificial walls between them, but I tend to disagree with that. And then additionally, too, try and augment, the build part with buying tools, that can help you punch above your weight, right? So stuff like Fivetran, for example, where it's just automated pipelines connect, point A to B, and you're done, right? Like try and automate as much as you can, which is what you probably should be doing anyway. Like, investing in people when you could invest in automation, when something isn't your core competency.
Yeah.
We typically
You're
prioritize.
still going to invest in people, right? You have to, but those people you hire only have so much time and bandwidth. And even things like using a cloud data warehouse versus, spinning up your own servers, there are advantages to going with open source and managing it yourself. It also gets very expensive when you can basically just pay someone else to manage all those details for you and focus on the data and not on the technology underlying it in some sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's flip it on its head then. So we covered like kind of building talent, and obviously you know there's more we could talk about there. But if you wanted to buy talent, um, this is where the whole hiring conundrum comes into, right? That's why people call us constantly asking us if we know data engineers, because this company, these people have chosen the path of, oh, well, we need to grow our team, therefore we need to find people. So, and we're finding that's not easy.
Yeah, and I think it's good to change the play here. I think what we typically see in the Salt Lake City market is that people try to find existing Salt Lake City talent, not realizing that there are a lot of people living in very expensive markets like New York City or the Bay Area who aren't seeing any benefit from living in those cities. Like they're highly locked down. Everyone's worried about COVID, understandably. The cost of living is insanely high. And people are thinking about moving to new areas. And so that's probably where you should be recruiting. I mean, you've had this experience, right? You've had friends who just pulled up stakes and moved to Salt Lake and got an apartment because they're working remote. They can take the same salary they have and they can pay a lot less for rent. Things are a little bit less congested and less locked down here. And you can potentially ski, or at least on those weeks when we get snow. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's yeah, we're seeing a lot of this. It's here. We're seeing the same thing happening in Portland,
Yeah.
Boise. Boise's blowing up big time.
From North Carolina, like research trying to like
Right?
what's happening, probably Austin as well, right? Like Austin's a big one.
Yeah.
Tim Dillon is not in the tech market, but comedian who just pulled up stakes from LA and moved to Austin.
And Joe
I think
Rogan
what
moved
we're
there.
seeing,
It's crazy, and
yeah,
you're seeing this all over the country too. I mean, I'm hearing people moving to the Midwest,
right,
Silicon Prairie area is what they call
yeah,
it, and it's gonna be a pretty big area because the entire Midwest is like a big prairie. So. Um,
basically their specific area. Like, yeah, where should I
but
move?
you're getting this high quality talent that's moving, now distributing across the country for a lot of reasons, and in a lot of cases, these people have worked at very big companies doing really cool stuff with data. These are the people that normally you wouldn't be able to get, period, because they're in the Bay Area and they're living in the Bay Area. Now maybe they aren't, and maybe they want to do something different, and maybe you can hire them, or maybe not, because the thinking is that well, you're not the only one thinking this. Like everyone is thinking this. So so
Give it a
there's
shot.
the efficient market hypothesis of Bay Area talent, right? So we just at a certain point, hiring just reaches an equilibrium, and we're kind of seeing it. Um, it is what it is. In Salt Lake City too, Silicon Slopes, whatever you want to call it here, it's blowing up big time. And the data engineering meetup that we're part of, we do a who's hiring and who's looking every meetup session, and the number of companies that come in and are hiring is always a lot, and the number of people looking for work is usually none.
Right. Because usually they're hiring because they just lost someone, went to another company, right? So
Yep.
yeah, it's
Yep.
not so just backfilling is really hard. And then creating a new position is even harder, I would say.
hmm And so
So
you can go about it a couple ways. I mean, you can hire employees. Typically, it's going to be from a different company. You might want to try the universities. The MSIS program is pretty decent. We both teach there, and I think there's some great candidates that probably we'd even consider hiring once they graduate. They'd probably be maybe a bit more junior, but it depends on what their starting base was. Some of these people also had like tremendous work experience before, so that might be one place to look. Is the university? I know they also have a big data program, and I'm sure that's the same in other universities across the country as well. So
yeah, I mean, it's funny. A lot of the students we work with, there's a big contingent of students from India who go to the University of Utah. And many of them are like, in some sense, highly, highly overqualified. Like they've spent years working for Accenture in data. And it's like, if you can snap up someone with that level of experience, go for it.
right, yeah. I mean, these are great candidates. I think now I think the visa issues that we're kind of current for the last 4 years. That you know that might change, and so that might make it easier to hire talent. But we'll see. You know, even with that talent too, you know, even foreign talent here studying, it's still not going to fill the gap as far as I can tell. I think those people just get instantly hired if the company's able to afford the visa. But you know, still, you know, where else to find people? Meetups is another one. But then again, you're going to join the line of like everyone else who's hiring and trying to look for people at the meetups. And so maybe we're going to talk about this in a bit too, some ways that you can probably make yourself more appealing to candidates.
Yeah. The point is explore all avenues. Maybe, I mean, maybe we're not saying, maybe it's not build versus buy. Maybe you really need to pursue both given the talent shortage right now.
Uh-huh.
Have junior talent that's in development and potentially hire senior people to train them who have the experience and can not only come in and do a job in your company, but potentially build out the whole stack as
Yeah.
you're transitioning to something new.
Mm-hmm. And I guess your other option in terms of buying is just using contractors.
Yeah.
So that's got its own pros and cons. I think the pros, you'll get the workload completed that you want to get completed. I think the big con of using contractors is the handoff, right? So unless you want to pay this contractor whatever insane amount of money they're going to charge, because they're going to be expensive, because data contractors are in demand, you need to have a handoff plan, or else you can expect to pay a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, what's going to happen is you'll pay a lot of money, they'll leave, and you'll have a system that works, but then it will break, and or you won't be able to upgrade it and do the next thing you need to do. Like it won't be integrated into systems that you're already using. And so either you call the contractor back in at a high price to come fix something or improve it, or the stuff they built just breaks and falls by the wayside, which also happens frequently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so in that regard too, I think our big suggestion is try and automate as much as you can. I know stuff that people say, oh, Fivetran's expensive. You know, that's a common complaint I hear. And look, hiring contractors or hiring top talent is also expensive. And
Yeah.
so if data pipelines aren't a core part of your business, and I can give you this litmus test, if somebody's written a connector they're charging money for to move data from point A to B, that's not a core competency of your business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there are plenty of companies out there that have solved this problem, and investigate those things, because moving data from point A to B is undifferentiated heavy lifting, and you should focus your attention on things that are going to move the needle for your business.
That's right. Or something that someone else hasn't done. Like, look what's
Right.
out
That
there.
hasn't.
Yeah. It's a very unique API, then maybe build something otherwise, just buy it from someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go on.
Oh, and I was just going to say, I mean, I think a lot of companies saw the same thing at the peak of the Hadoop craze. Like Hadoop was supposed to save you all this money and be highly scalable. And in practice, it just cost companies a ton of money. I mean, often you were talking like $1 million a year just to get your foot in the door by the time you accounted for salaries and things like this. That's, you know, the hardware and the data center costs turned out to be pretty tiny compared to the team to run the system. And you've got to keep that in mind with data engineering. It's very tempting to stand up custom solutions, but they get very, very expensive. And so weigh, you know, the cost of a Fivetran or a Matillion or whatever technology against what it's going to cost you to build and maintain the same thing yourself.
Yeah. I can guarantee if you run the numbers, you're gonna you might make some different decisions, or maybe not. You know, everyone's different. Some people like reinventing the wheel, and if that's what you want to do, then it's your prerogative. You know, so let's talk about some things then, like things you should be doing regardless if you're going to build or buy, right? So I mean, at some point you're going to need talent, whether that's something, you know, a person you've cultivated internally or somebody you're going to hire. So let's what are some things that come to your mind when you think it's just some habits that companies need to be doing to make themselves attractive?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to salary. So people care about salary, but they care about the structure of their team, the team they're going to be working with, and the projects, and a definition and a direction, right? Like people don't want to get hired and then just be working on maintenance tasks without the ability to do anything new or interesting. So in that respect, I mean, maybe it's really important to kind of have a mission for that team.
Yeah.
Before you even start hiring, right?
Yeah, we've seen this a lot. There's a lot of bait and switch with data jobs, data science jobs, and data engineering jobs. Data science is notorious for this, right? Where I know even especially a few years ago, it's matured a bit, but a few years ago, everyone had data science job postings, and I wager quite a bit of money that the people that were hired for those positions didn't actually end up doing what was on the job description, because they
Right.
weren't ready. They didn't build the foundation. So it's like, oh, come here and you can build like, um, Skynet or whatever. You show up on the job and you're like, oh yeah, so we don't, all of our data is in like this Excel sheet over here, and we need to.
All the time. Yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah.
We have one friend who was working with a startup, and he was a data engineer, and they told him, your job is just to somehow find data because we want to be able to tell our investors that we have data. And there was really nothing specific for him to do except collect some data so that they could show that to their investors. As it turns out, I think the startup eventually went out of business, which is not too surprising if they couldn't define what their mission actually was. But this happens all the time, whether it's at startups or Fortune 500 companies. It's the buzzword syndrome, right? It's like, oh, data is really cool. Therefore, we need to hire data people, but there was just no clarity on what those data people were actually supposed to be doing or how they were supposed to contribute. And that gets very demoralizing if you're in that position.
Yeah, and especially given the the hot job market for data talent,
Yeah.
At a certain point too, I don't really care what you're getting paid unless it's a ton of money.
Right.
Because at a certain point, you're not going to tolerate a situation like that, right? I mean, because here's the deal, like we kind of hit on this earlier, but we're talking about the Hadoop job skills and stuff, but like job skills go stale.
Yeah.
In tech, especially in data, incredibly fast. I at a maximum, I put 2 years on any particular technology and your related skills to that. If you're an expert in Spark, wow, congratulations. Either in 2 years that's going to be around or it's not, and yada yada yada. I'm not picking on Spark, but the whole point is things move so incredibly fast that if you aren't staying on top of your skills and learning new stuff like every week, basically, you know, that sucks, and you're eventually going to be obsolete in the marketplace. And so if you're at a company where you're not learning new things on a continuous basis, if you're the guy who has to go find data just for the hell of it, like that sucks actually. And you might be getting paid $500,000 a year. And that's good because you're going to need that money when that company goes out of business, and you're going to have to like refactor your skills.
Yeah, exactly. You'll need some time to find another job because you'll have to actually reacquire whatever the latest thing is.
Yeah. So one litmus test too, I would say for an employer is make sure, you're attractive to candidates, whether that's contractors, employees, or existing people who want to, in your company that want to build up their skills, like become a part of the community, the tech and data community, host meetups, sponsor meetups, have your teams give talks at meetups. That's a good way to get embedded in the local community. Participate in conferences, Slack groups. Basically make yourself visible, right?
Be
Nobody
contributing
knows who you are. What's that?
Oh, and be contributing to the community somehow,
Yeah.
whether it's open source software or just, trying to get knowledge out there, spread knowledge around. Have your engineers make contributions to those meetups, not just show up and sit in a chair for an hour and a half, which I guess none of us are doing now except over Zoom. But in the near future, hopefully that will change.
Yeah. I mean, Glassdoor ratings are another one that I personally use. And we use this too, to sort of gauge companies that we want to work with too. If Glassdoor ratings are weird, then, as an employee or a prospective employee, I think what we found is, people post negative Glassdoor ratings because they have an axe to grind typically. And, to be honest, that's, that kind of sucks. On the same token, if you keep seeing the same repeated theme over and over and over again, there might be some truth to that, and you might want to dig in and ask some people at that company. And so as an employer, your Glassdoor rating is worth quite a bit in finding new candidates. If you have if a great reputation, means a lot. If you don't have a great reputation, you should work on that.
Well, at some point you have to ask yourself, why are there 10 people at my company or who used to be at my company who have an axe to grind? Like, why is that? Because that's a lot of people to hate your guts. Like, if it were one person, one bad review, that would be one thing. But if it's a plethora of bad reviews, then you might have an organizational problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the tech community too, and by tech I mean technology, which is software engineering, data engineering, et cetera. In the tech communities, it's very tight. Like everyone kind of knows each other by no more than like 3 degrees, right? So like in Salt Lake City, we know most people, or if we don't, we are probably 1 degree of separation from knowing that person. And that's just kind of how it is because it's a tight community. And so reputation's everything. So as an employer, like make sure your reputation within the tech community is great and always keep working on it because that's how you're going to attract talent. People will want to come work at your company if you have, if they're proud to work at a place, right? As the old saying goes, you don't leave your job, you leave your manager.
Yep.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
truth to that.
That you want people to want to show up every day, right? If that's not happening, if it's just a grind, then at some point they're going to start asking questions about where else they could go that might be more interesting, less
Mhm.
stressful.
Yeah, and have interesting stuff to work on too. I think to your point about mission, that's totally spot on.
Yeah.
Have a goal with data. Don't just do data just because it's the cool thing to do. Like have a use case that's going to be compelling. I mean, people want to get jobs because they want to solve actual problems and contribute value. There's also the aspect of resume-driven development that does happen. But if you talk to a lot of people, honestly, they just want to work on cool problems and solve cool problems and create value. Really, I mean, the rest falls into place from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question, I mean, if you're doing business analytics, like what business problem are you trying to solve?
Hmm.
If you say that you want to build out a data warehouse, the question is why? Like, are you just collecting a bunch of random data, or do you want to have better insights about your customers or your business? Do you want to look back at how the pandemic affected your business, how it's moved more online and away from brick and mortar? If it's machine learning, like what machine learning problem are you actually trying to solve? And use that as your part of your recruitment, hiring, and team building process.
Hmm.
Talk about what you're actually trying to do, not just we want data because data will magically solve all our problems.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And it kind of extends into you know, in your company,
Yeah.
make sure you're being relentless
Yeah.
with data, right? Like it's not just hiring a data team. If your company is really going to do data and be the type of place where, well, it's competitive in the 21st century for one, like uh, data needs to be utilized across the business to start
Right.
developing a data-driven culture. And that's also how you're going to find the hidden nuggets of talent in your company. I mean, I've been at companies where some of the better data people or the people with the most potential was just the person sitting in the desk, just, a couple cubicles down. And it was, you would never have known this if you hadn't given them a shot at looking at a report and trying to find insights and getting the wheels turning with these people. I mean, so that's another piece too. There's probably a ton of latent talent in your existing company, um, that you could cultivate. And they may not be in any technical department either. They might be working in accounting, for example, or somewhere
Yeah.
else, right? And also think about the hiring dynamics there. Is it easier to maybe train and cultivate somebody from a different department, or it might be easier to backfill that position than it is to hire somebody from your software engineering department who now you're going to have to backfill that job too.
Yeah. If you find someone who's really, really good at Excel, like they can write scripts and functions and things, that's probably the kind of person who can learn SQL as well
Mhm.
and generate, interesting insights using business logic and
Yeah,
potentially evolve, that as well. So yeah, that's absolutely the kind of thing you should be on the lookout for.
for sure. Like our friend Dave Langer, he's got great courses. He's on a great mission too to teach data skills and data literacy to the masses of people, 700 plus million Excel users, right? Trying to teach them things like Excel and R, and he's definitely right. His insight is spot on. Where the data talent is actually staring you right in the face. Typically, you just got to figure out how are you going to make these people more data literate and functioning, in a much more modern data stack. And
Yeah.
so,
I mean, the frank fact is you have a whole spectrum of Excel users. And so people who can just open an Excel report and, do a sum, that's probably not your best candidate. But if you have people who can really analyze data in Excel and do interesting statistics, they likely can make the jump to SQL and using databases and redeploy that talent in a much more effective way.
right.
Yeah.
Sorry, a bunch of dogs barking out here.
Okay. I had dogs in my hallway too. So, yeah.
uh,
Another comment I was going to make as far as data culture is that there's also kind of a need to retrain executives when it comes to data. And the problem I've seen is you have these people who are over marketing and they're very talented. At the same time, they've gotten in this habit like, oh, I just react to my intuition. And in practice, that often means that they ignore data. And it's very toxic to an organization in the modern world to be completely ignoring data. In that case, not only are you missing out on a lot of opportunities and perhaps making really bad decisions based on your intuition, but the people who work in that organization on data are going to find themselves completely demoralized because they'll uncover these insights, which get completely ignored to the detriment of the company.
Yeah.
So to some extent, this has to happen at the top. And that doesn't mean that all of your executives need to know SQL or data engineering, but they need to understand how to deploy data in making decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's also going to give those execs empathy when they're approached by a hiring manager saying, look, I need budget for, these data hires
Right.
and so forth, right? So if that executive, understands data, yeah, it's going to make it a lot easier. If they don't understand data, you might as well just go talk to like a brick wall or something, because it's
Right.
just
Not going to get used, right?
what's that?
You'll be spending money on the team, and those insights simply won't get used if
This
you don't
happens a lot. This happens a
respond.
lot, right? So yeah, there's a huge disconnect between like whoever is over the data team and then the execs, and ultimately the execs are like, what are we paying for over here? I don't get it. And that's again why you got to be relentless. If you're the hiring manager, you have to be relentless in terms of like whether or not you have a data team, or sort of running slower than you want. Keep producing insights or add value where you can. Keep yourself visible in front of the company, right? Get people excited about data. Be an advocate for data, because that's really the only way you're going to get the support, both from the bottom and from the top, to continue growing, data and at the company. Otherwise, what we've seen is like if the advocacy isn't there, that data team goes away. Either they leave because nobody's excited about what they're doing, and they can go to a million other places where people will be excited about what they're doing, or companies just make some tough decisions and say, look, this data thing ain't working out. We're going to go back to fax reports and spreadsheets and have a nice
Yeah.
day.
And
So
as we've discussed this entire call, data is very expensive, right? It is not cheap to hire people who are good. And so if they're not actually delivering value because of the people above them, then yeah, it's going to look like just a big blotch of red ink on all the reports, like we're spending $500,000 a year not seeing value out of this. And I think it's important too to discuss the limitations of descriptive business analytics. And so descriptive business analytics is like, what happened this last quarter? What happened yesterday? If you don't actually respond to that, if you don't do anything with that information, then what exactly is the point, except to say that we lost money yesterday?
right.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, it's a tough market out there for to find data talent. It's as simple as that, right? And I think we're pretty candid with our friends too, who ask us about data talent. It is what it is. If we could wave a magic wand and solve this problem tomorrow, we would. Unfortunately, there's a skills gap. There's a legit skills gap. So you're gonna have to train people, and that's gonna take time. At the same time, anybody who is skilled is going to command a huge price in the marketplace, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So figure out how to deploy those people so you'll actually get value out of their talent, because they're not going to come cheap if they have experience.
they're going to come cheap, and they're going to get really bored if they're not engaged. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of places hiring right now, and we'll see. I mean, it was interesting during the start of COVID, because it seemed like the floor dropped out from almost every business except if you were a grocery store or a PPE supplier. But and we had some concerns about the data world too, but it came roaring back within like a month.
Yeah.
So
Online retailers were very worried about their prospects, and suddenly they were just seeing massive orders because no one wanted to go to brick and mortar anymore.
Yep. Yeah. So if anything, the future's been pulled forward by several years. I know it's a cliche at this point to say about COVID, but COVID was an accelerant for stuff that was already happening. Data hiring and which is a result of data demand and from across organizations, and I mean, it just kept growing, and it ain't going to stop.
No.
I don't know what would stop it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are questions about stickiness. In other words, how much of a kind of relaxation will there be, and how much more foot traffic will go back to brick and mortar stores? I'm sure some, but like those questions are open. But you're absolutely right. Like things will not return to the way they were.
Yeah, I mean, tell me a scenario where like cloud adoption is going to decline.
Exactly. Like everyone's like, well, let's put everything back on-prem again because we really don't like remote work. We don't like the cloud. We want to have everything under our desks or in our data center in our office.
Yeah, I mean that ain't happening. And I hear people talking about scenarios. Oh well, that's very possible. And this cloud thing's a fad. And the only thing, the thing I tell these people is like, look, your job's a fad. Okay, like if you're gonna have the attitude that something like the cloud's a fad, like you don't get it.
Right.
And so, but whatever. So
Yeah, I mean, the trends were pretty clear before COVID, and I think they've become much more clear now.
yeah, it's crystal clear.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Hopefully we've thoroughly beat this one in submission. So
I suspect we'll loop back to it in the next couple of months. I mean, it's just a huge ongoing theme: how you train people, how you recruit, and the space is going to continue to evolve as hopefully we're coming out of COVID with vaccination and such. But
yeah, I think the big crux of this is the training part of the equation, right? That has not been solved.
no,
Otherwise, you would see lots of people. It would be equivalent to what you see in data science land right now. It's not happening in data engineering,
right.
and even with data science, like there's still the supply and demand is completely out of whack. So
Well, and even with data science, I think we probably agree that the skill set that people are taking away from the training is useful, but it could be more useful, right? It's great to learn pandas on a laptop, but people need more database skills, for example. And so I think there's an overlap between the skills that data engineers need and the new skills that data scientists need to pick up.
yeah. Because when I look at like some of the stuff that's being taught for data engineering or data
Yeah.
science, it was relevant like a couple of years ago. It's not relevant today at all. And so, but we'll cross that bridge later.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We'll keep talking.
yeah.
More days to come.
Right on. Well, talk to you later and see you next Monday. So,
Sounds good.
all right.